After having 2 wives, Lu Zhi managed to treat us both completely equally. The new hairpins and jewelry from Jinyu Pavilion. Qin Wan and I would each get a set. If he went shopping with Qin Wan yesterday, he would dine with me today. Even for the nights we shared a bed, Qin Wan and I were allocated exactly 10 days each. Lu Zhi was so fair and perfect in his arrangement that, reasonably speaking, I had nothing to complain about. And indeed, that was the case. For a long time, Qin Wan and I got along in harmony, until one day, as I was counting the days on my fingers. Tomorrow is my birthday. Husband should be coming to my room, right? My maid, Bitao, glanced at my expression and carefully reminded me,
Madam, you have remembered incorrectly. Tomorrow is Madam Qin's turn.
I froze for a moment, suddenly remembering that I had injured my leg a few days ago, and Lu Zhi had stayed to accompany me for several days. Calculating the days, I had already used up my 10 days. If I wanted to see Lu Zhi again, I would have to wait until next month. I suddenly fell silent, and after a long pause, I let out a deep sigh. Bitao, I want a divorce. Bitao was startled to hear this, but she quickly recovered herself and grumbled.
Even if Madam is angry with the master, you must not speak such nonsense. What if someone else hears you?
Her expression was calm. She clearly did not take it seriously. After all, I had said similar angry words many times before. When I was truly furious, I would pack a few small bags and dare to run away from home, vowing never to see Lu Zhi again in this lifetime. But every single time, didn't Lu Zhi eventually coax me back with just a few sweet words, making me return home with him obediently? Over the past few years, Lu Zhi had become better and better at keeping things equal, leaving absolutely no room for complaint. I fought with Qin Wan for so many years, and I'm tired of fighting. Gradually, my desire to fight for his favor and jealousy faded, so we live in peaceful coexistence, with neither of us bothering the other. Those little tricks to win Lu Zhi's attention, those childish, harsh words of cutting ties, gradually disappeared into the passage of time, covered by a thick layer of dust. Outsiders all think I have come to terms with it, abandoning those absurd ideas of monopolizing a man. I also feel like I have come to terms with it. Isn't it quite nice to be the way we are now? Everyone lives out their days in peace, not causing trouble for one another. Qin Wan and I don't have to rack our brains and exhaust all our energy to curry favor with one person. Lu Zhi doesn't have to worry because of Qin Wan and me fighting out of jealousy. Even if I do nothing at all, I can monopolize Lu Zhi for a third of the days in a month. Qin Wan gets her separate third. On the remaining third of the nights, Lu Zhi sleeps in the study. Compared to the past, I save myself a lot of worry now. Everyone is advising me not to be greedy, and I've tried to keep myself from being greedy. But on those nights, when I count the days on my fingers, guessing exactly which day Lu Zhi will come to my room, and counting over and over yet still unable to figure it out, I still feel very sad. I guess I am certainly no match for Lu Zhi. Lu Zhi is much cleverer than I am. Such a troublesome account. He manages clearly and orderly, just like a shrewd merchant, calculating every detail as he distributes his affection. Whichever side loses out, he compensates them a bit more. Whichever side gets more, he cuts back a bit. He insists on keeping both sides of the scale absolutely balanced. I wanted to find fault with him, complaining that he was partial, yet after searching for a long time, I couldn't find the slightest flaw. In the end, I could only lower my head and admit with great reluctance, Lu Zhi is not wrong. It is I who am wrong. It is I who am too selfish. I hated sharing and getting only half a husband. I longed for a Lu Zhi who belonged entirely and completely to me. If that wasn't possible, then I would rather throw it all away. Seeing me lost in thought, Bitao thought I was sad and tried to comfort me.
When tomorrow comes, I'll have a maid invite the master over. Tomorrow is your birthday, madam. The master has always doted on you, so he'll likely be willing to make an exception for you. At worst, we can borrow a day in advance from next month. Even Madame Qin won't be able to find any fault with that.
I let out a faint, bitter smile. Borrowing a day in advance. It made me sound like an employee, working under Lu Zhi's nose, trembling with fear, begging Lu Zhi to be a little generous. Given my history and bond with Lu Zhi, we wouldn't end up in such a miserable state. If I went to cry to him, Lu Zhi might hesitate, but he would most likely agree in the end. But to compensate Qin Wan, he would spend an extra night with her next month. Lu Zhi, after all, was always the most fair. Neither Qin Wan nor I would ever be allowed to lose out to the other. When Qin Wan wanted to wear the embroidered collar brocade from Shuzhou, Lu Zhi bought it for her, and he would surely buy a bolt for me as well, even if the style wasn't to my liking. When Lu Zhi picked out a hairpin for me from Jinyu Pavilion, I happily tucked it into my hair, looking at myself in the vanity mirror from every angle, unable to get enough of it. Yet the very next day, I saw that exact same hairpin on Qin Wan's head. It was identical down to the last detail. As it turned out, of that same hairpin, Lu Zhi had bought two. As it turned out, the affection he gave was split into two identical portions. The portion I received was not special in the slightest. Once I figured this out, I pulled the hairpin from my hair and snapped it in two with all my might, the broken hairpin, and threw it onto the floor. It made a sharp, crisp sound as it hit. Hearing the noise, Bitao looked over, frightened out of her wits.
Isn't that Madam's dowry hairpin?
Bitao was mistaken. This was not part of my dowry. My dowry hairpin had been pawned 10 years ago, just to buy Lu Zhi a bowl of longevity noodles. 10 years ago, Qin Wan had not yet arrived. Lu Zhi and I were dirt poor, sharing a single old blanket between us, and splitting every penny in half to spend. Even the nest of mice in the corner of our room was smaller than in other houses. On Lu Zhi's birthday, I planned to buy him a bowl of longevity noodles. The noodle stall at the street corner made the most authentic longevity noodles. It cost 20 coins a bowl. The broth was simmered with beef bones for several hours. Once cooked, the noodles were springy and clean, topped with a spoonful of their signature chili oil and a handful of cilantro. The aroma was enough to steal one's soul away. Whenever Lu Zhi and I walked past that noodle stall, we would both swallow our saliva in unison. But as soon as we reached out to touch our flat, empty coin purse, we would snap back to reality instantly. This aroma actually smells quite ordinary. It is not even as good as the noodles I make. Lu Zhi nodded in agreement.
My wife's noodle cooking skills are indeed beyond compare. I have indeed been craving your cooking.
As soon as we entered the house, I cheerfully put on my apron and busied myself in front of the stove. Before long, I proudly brought out 2 bowls of overcooked mushy noodles. They sat limp and sticky in the murky noodle water, looking as if they had died in the pot. Yet, Lu Zhi seemed to have lost his sense of taste. He devoured the noodles hungrily until the bowls were licked clean. As he stuffed his mouth, he kept nodding.
My wife's cooking skills are truly beyond compare.
Those mushy, overcooked noodles were what Lu Zhi ate for 10 years. He said they were the most delicious noodles in the world. But no matter how foolish I was, I should have known that it was just a lie Lu Zhi told to comfort me. On the day of Lu Zhi's birthday, I didn't want him to eat that bowl of overcooked noodles anymore. I hoped he could taste the most delicious noodles in the world. I had a narrow vision of the world, never having even left the entrance of our town. I was convinced that the most delicious noodles in the world must be the ones from the noodle stall at the end of the street. A bowl of longevity noodles cost 20 coins. This price was a bit high, but it was worth it. I had pinched pennies for over 3 months to save those 20 coins. There were so many things to spend money on at home. Firewood, rice, oil, and salt cost money. The private school he enrolled in cost money. Those writing materials also cost money. I took the small box of gold and silver from my dowry and poured all of it into our expenses. Piece by piece, they turned into firewood, rice, oil, and salt, and into the writing materials on his desk at school. In the end, the only thing left was a plain silver hairpin in my hair. I touched the hairpin. I really couldn't bear to part with it. This was the last piece of my dowry that my mother had left me. I needed to keep something to remember her by. While I was struggling with the decision, someone gave me an idea. He took a liking to the small items I embroidered and wanted to do business with me. I would embroider handkerchiefs for him, and he would sell them to wealthy wives and young ladies. For every handkerchief sold, he would give me 50 copper coins. By embroidering handkerchiefs, our household debts were finally paid off. After a month, there was even a surplus. I counted the extra 20 coins over and over again, fearing I had miscounted and would end up disappointed. I checked them time and time again. It was exactly 20 coins. No more and no less. I thought to myself that I could finally buy a bowl of longevity noodles for Lu Zhi. Hehe, how could the heavens be so kind to me? But when I walked to the noodle stall on the street, the worker glanced at the 20 coins and said,
"Not enough. Beef has gotten expensive lately. A bowl of noodles now costs 30 coins.
I searched my entire body, but I couldn't find the missing 10 copper coins. But I really wanted to bring back a bowl of longevity noodles for him. So blushing with embarrassment, I spoke in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. Could you please let me buy it on credit this once? In a few days, I will definitely bring back the 10 coins I owe you. The clerk originally wanted to mock me a bit, but seeing my head bowed low and my hands nervously wringing the hem of my clothes, looking entirely as if I had done something wrong, he suddenly felt a touch of pity.
Why don't you consider our plain noodles? You can get a bowl for just 10 coins, and the taste isn't bad either.
How could that be the same? What I wanted to bring to Lu Zhi was the most delicious noodles in the world.
Well, then there is nothing I can do.
The clerk said with some regret. Actually, there was still a way. I touched the plain silver hairpin in my hair. After hesitating for a moment, I went to the pawn shop and pawned it for 50 copper coins. With these 50 coins, I bought the bowl of longevity noodles for Lu Zhi. Seeing the money in my hand, the clerk wanted to make another sale.
Now you can afford 2 bowls of noodles. Why don't you buy one for yourself as well?
Smelling the delicious aroma of the noodles, I couldn't help but swallow my saliva. Then I gently shook my head, used the remaining money to add more meat to his noodles. When night fell, Lu Zhi was astonished to see the extra bowl of longevity noodles on the dining table.
Where did we get the extra money to buy this?
Then, He instinctively looked up and saw the bun styled on top of my head, where a fine silver hairpin used to be. There was now absolutely nothing left. Lu Zhi understood immediately. He lowered his head and quickly wiped his face.
Such a big bowl of noodles. I really can't finish it all by myself. Dear, please help me share some.
Looking at the bowl of noodles, I secretly swallowed my saliva, but I still kept up a stubborn front. I'm not hungry at all. Just leave some hot broth for me to drink. Lu Zhi's expression turned serious.
That definitely won't do. These are longevity noodles for a birthday. You must have a few bites. This means passing the good fortune onto you.
I felt a little worried. If you give your good fortune to me, then what will you do? What if there isn't enough? Lu Zhi had already suffered enough. Living with me, he never had enough to eat or warm clothes to wear. If he shared his good fortune with me on top of that, wouldn't his life be even harder? Lu Zhi's gaze was tender.
How could that be? I am the luckiest person in the whole world. Otherwise, where would I get such good fortune as to marry such a virtuous wife? My luck is very strong. Even if I share more, there will definitely be plenty left.
Seeing him say this, I finally felt at ease. That bowl of steaming hot noodles was ultimately finished by the two of us, bite by bite. We became the two luckiest people in the whole world. A few days later, Lu Zhi carved a wooden hairpin with his own hands and gave it to me. His hands were used to holding writing brushes, so holding a carving knife was very unfamiliar to him. By the time the hairpin was carved, several cuts had appeared on his hands. Looking at those cuts, my heart ached so much that tears welled up in my eyes. Lu Zhi tucked the wooden hairpin into my hair and wiped away my tears with a smile.
Such a beautiful wife, so out of nowhere. Who on earth made you so sad?
For some reason, my tears flowed even more heavily. Later, our family became slightly better off. By right, I should have redeemed that silver hairpin. Initially, it was a pawn with a redemption option, and I had agreed to redeem it with money a few months later, but I couldn't save any money. Whenever I had some extra cash on hand, I always wanted to buy things for Lu Zhi. His clothes were so worn out, with many patches sewn onto the sleeves. Would his classmates laugh at him at the academy? His writing brush was splitting, and he was out of ink. I wanted to buy him better ones. He had been wearing those worn-out shoes for years. It was time to get him a new pair, so I kept putting it off, and the hairpin eventually became lost to the pawnshop forever. But this meant I no longer had to struggle with the decision. I could justify treating Lu Zhi well with a clear conscience. I had the wooden hairpin Lu Zhi carved for me with his own hands, and that was enough. A few more years passed, and Lu Zhi passed both the provincial and imperial exams in succession. His official rank rose higher and higher. The place we lived in went from a leaky, run-down shack to a spacious, grand mansion. We moved all the way from the village into the capital. My jewelry box, which used to be completely empty, slowly filled up with all kinds of gold, silver, and jewels. In the end, Lu Zhi gave me more and more jewelry. That original small wooden box could no longer hold it all, so he simply got me a dozen more large jewelry boxes. I had so much jewelry that I couldn't possibly wear it all, wearing a different piece every day. They would last me into my next life. Yet among this piled up heap of jewelry, one particular item seemed to be missing. At first, I didn't think much of it, until one day, Lu Zhi mysteriously pulled me aside and took out a small box as if presenting a treasure. When he opened the lid, inside was a very simple silver hairpin. Compared to the gemstone-encrusted hairpins on the dressing table, this silver hairpin was almost excessively plain, but its design was exactly the same as the one I had pawned years ago. Seeing me dazed, Lu Zhi looked slightly embarrassed. After that hairpin was resold by the pawn shop back then, it passed through the hands of several buyers. He had asked people to search for it for a long time, but in the end, the trail of that hairpin went cold. With no other options, he could only rely on his memory to find a craftsman who could forge an exact replica. After so many years, I had long forgotten what the original hairpin looked like, yet Lu Zhi remembered the carved patterns on it so clearly. I could no longer hold back my tears. Lu Zhi smiled and gently wiped away my tears.
I knew that. No matter how much jewelry you have, this is still my wife's favorite.
Lu Zhi understood me better than I understood myself. Since he understood me so well, I thought he would never hurt me in this lifetime. Yet the very next day, I put the silver hairpin in my hair and wandered around the courtyard, secretly showing it off. That was when I ran into Qin Wan, who had also come to admire the flowers. In her hair, she wore the exact same silver hairpin. It turned out that the same love had been split into two by Lu Zhi. The share I held in my hand was nothing special. That night, I couldn't help but confront Lu Zhi. Lu Zhi merely replied nonchalantly.
Didn't we agree on this from the start? One share for each of you. No favoritism. What is given to you, she gets as well.
I absolutely loathed Qin Wan. Before Qin Wan appeared, Lu Zhi belonged entirely to me. Once he entered our home, I could only have half of Lu Zhi. After Lu Zhi became a high-ranking official, many people scrambled to gift him beautiful women. All kinds of exquisite beauties. Tall, short, plump, and slender. It was safe to say they had calculated all of his preferences. Staring at those beauties beauties. My heart hung in suspense, but Lu Zhi only gave them a casual glance and ordered all of these women to be sent back.
One wife is enough for me in this lifetime. Notify them not to waste their efforts.
My heart settled back into place, feeling as sweet as if it were soaked in a jar of honey. During these years of serving as a high official, others always shamelessly tried to send people to his chambers, both men and women. Yet, they were all turned away by him. Not a single outsider was kept. But there is an exception to everything. During that period of time, the court was filled with tension and suspicion. I certainly did not understand these official matters, but from Lu Zhi's worried face and the terrifying gossip, I could guess a thing or two. Lu Zhi's mentor was reported in an anonymous letter, accused of forming cliques and secretly colluding with the enemy. The informant was an extremely wicked and highly influential corrupt official. Lu Zhi's mentor was an honest and upright official, unable to tolerate the other's bribery and oppression of the people. He was preparing to gather evidence to bring him down. Having caught wind of this, the corrupt official simply hardened his heart and bit back at mentor Lu, falsely accusing him of colluding with the enemy and throwing him, along with his accomplices, into the death row prison to await execution after autumn. Lu Zhi bustled about everywhere for his mentor, his hair turning white with worry over the past half year, but it was still to no avail. He could only watch as his mentor was taken to the execution ground, barely managing to save his only daughter. That year, Qin Wan was only 16, possessing beautiful features. With the sudden calamity befalling her family, the fine young lady instantly fell to the bottom of the world, becoming a pitiful criminal's family member. Understanding that she no longer had any relatives left in the world, she wept bitterly, leaning into Lu Zhi's chest. Lu Zhi stuffed some money and valuables into her hands and asked others to help find her a place to settle down. Yet, Qin Wan shook her head vigorously, her face pale but determined.
In this world, I only trust Master Lu. Except for staying by Master Lu's side, I will go nowhere.
Qin Wan only wanted to marry Lu Zhi, willing even to be a concubine without status. This deeply troubled Lu Zhi. He couldn't persuade her no matter what, so he had no choice but to turn to me for help. Speaking in a soft, gentle voice, he said,
She is, after all, the only remaining bloodline of my mentor. If I let her become a concubine without any proper status, how could I ever face my mentor in the afterlife?
I don't know what to do either. So what do you think? Seeing that I wasn't displeased, Lu Zhi finally mustered up the courage to test the waters.
Could we let Qin Wan enter the household as an equal wife?
I understood what the concept of an equal wife meant, but I thought about it for a moment, recalling how, in the past, when others tried all sorts of ways to send him beautiful women, Lu Zhi had rejected them without even blinking. So, I put my mind at ease and put on a generous front. All right, then let her enter the household as an equal wife. It is the perfect way to show those gossiping women outside that I am not some narrow-minded jealous wife. As it turned out, within 2 days of her entering the household, I regretted it immensely. Whenever I recalled this matter, I wished I could slap myself hard across the face a few times. Originally, there were only 2 chairs placed by our dining table. After she entered the household, an extra chair was added to the table, right next to Lu Zhi's right side. At the dinner table that night, my favorite steamed sea bass was served. Lu Zhi habitually picked up a piece of fish for me, but after a brief pause, he picked up another piece and gave it to Qin Wan. I was completely dumbfounded on the spot, unable to believe my eyes. The open and secret struggle between Qin Wan and me began at just about that very moment. The battles within an inner courtyard are always fought with invisible silent weapons. Qin Wan was a deeply calculating woman, constantly finding ways to coax Lu Zhi into her room. But I was definitely no pushover either. Any tricks Qin Wan knew how to use, I knew them too. When she feigned a headache and a fever, I would pretend to have a stomachache and roll around in pain. When she wiped away tears and said she was frightened by a nightmare, imploring Lu Zhi to stay and keep her company, I would throw a tantrum and complain that I had encountered an evil spirit in the garden last night and now felt unwell all over. At first, Lu Zhi was inexperienced. He worried about Qin Wan, but couldn't let go of me either. The way the two of us tossed him back and forth made his head spin, but he was very clever. He immediately realized things couldn't go on like this. After all, he couldn't be in 2 places at once. If he wanted to look after everyone, he would have to take a knife and cut himself in half. So, learning from his bitter experience, he began to be strictly impartial. For every item in the estate, Qin Wan and I got an equal share. Lu Zhi also refused to show favoritism. Whoever did wrong was punished. Qin Wan and I didn't take it seriously at first, continuing to trip each other up, both openly and secretly. Today you'd secretly slip me a laxative, and tomorrow I'd quietly sprinkle pollen on you. Finally, Qin Wan was punished, and I was punished right along with her. On the night of my punishment, I was copying scriptures in a huff. The more I wrote, the angrier I got. I wished I could treat the rice paper as Lu Zhi's face and poke a bunch of holes in it. The maid next to me really couldn't bear to watch any longer. She hesitated.
To tell the truth, this time, madam, you were the one in the wrong first.
I knew that in my heart. It was because I had poured boiling water and killed Qin Wan's orchids. But that was only because Qin Wan had intentionally torn my clothes first.
But master also punished Lady Qin. Master is still very fair.
Bi Dao spoke up for him. It would have been better if she hadn't spoken. As soon as she did, my tears burst through the gates and kept falling uncontrollably. I clearly put Lu Zhi first in everything. So why couldn't Lu Zhi also protect me in everything? Before Qin Wan arrived, Lu Zhi was very protective of me if I had a conflict with someone else. Even if, strictly speaking, it was mostly my fault. After Lu Zhi heard my complaints, he would still make a show of pondering over it and put on an extremely impartial front to deliver his verdict.
It is all that fellow's fault, who told him to be so meddlesome as to provoke my wife first.
Upon hearing this, I felt both guilty and delighted. But as soon as Qin Wan showed up, Lord Lu turned into an impartial judge. Can we think of a way to make Qin Wan leave? Naturally, this wasn't for me to decide. Qin Wan had to want to leave of her own accord. How can I get her to leave on her own? Once Qin Wan gives up on Lord Lu, perhaps she will leave of her own volition. Having figured this out, I ran to ask Qin Wan exactly what she saw in Lord Lu, so I could tell him to change it. At first, Qin Wan was slightly taken aback, but then she covered her mouth and giggled.
A man of Lord Lu's extraordinary grace and talent, naturally Qin Wan is infatuated with every single part of him.
Hearing her tone, she clearly intended to cling to him for the rest of her life. Just as I was pacing around in anxiety, Bitao told me an amusing rumor. She said there was a matchmaker temple in the north of the city where many couples went to burn incense and tie red strings, praying to the gods for a blessed marriage. With so many pilgrims visiting, the large tree in the courtyard was covered in red strings and wooden plaques, making a crisp clinking sound whenever a gentle breeze swept through. But the bizarre thing was, the vast majority of those who tied red strings at the matchmaker temple broke up not long after. They parted ways, and as time went on, the street gossip began to spread. Everyone complained that the matchmaker enshrined in that temple was a wicked deity who loved nothing more than going against people's wishes. Hearing this, an idea popped into my head. I slipped out of the house quietly, ran to the matchmaker temple, and wrote Qin Wan's and Lord Lu's names on a small wooden plaque, tying it to that tree with a red string. There were far too many red strings on the tree, and fearing the heavens wouldn't notice, I climbed up particularly high to tie the red string to the highest branch. By doing this, the heavens would see theirs first. Perhaps I got carried away with joy. After finishing, I was caught off guard and lost my footing, falling straight down from the tree trunk. I turned pale with pain. Bi Dao was sweating with anxiety. She grit her teeth and carried me all the way home on her back. Lu Zhi found the most skilled physician in the city to treat me. Fortunately, no vital areas were injured. After writing a few prescriptions, he said I just needed to lie in bed and rest quietly. Once the physician left, Lu Zhi was both angry and amused.
Why don't you tell me? How did you manage to hurt your leg like this?
I stammered, not daring to answer him, and could only hurriedly change the subject. I couldn't very well admit that I was punished by heaven for doing something bad. That would truly be a self-inflicted disaster. During those days of bed rest, I was incredibly bored. Lu Zhi would sometimes come to visit me, and other times he would go to accompany Qin Wan. Whenever Lu Zhi came over, I felt quite happy in my heart. But the moment he left, my spirits would plummet, and I would start letting my mind wander. I recalled the days of the past, even though life was so hard back then. Now I actually began to miss it. At that time, we were too poor. In the dead of winter, we couldn't afford charcoal to heat the brick bed. The blanket we shared was short, so Lu Zhi and I had to huddle close together, shivering from the cold. Back then, our hearts were so close. Even though the winter was freezing, it didn't feel that hard to endure. Now, our lives are prosperous. Now that the house has underfloor heating and is as warm as spring, the quilts we use are long enough, so the two of us have no need to squeeze together at all. But Lu just stays in Qin Wan's room. His heart is already so far away from me now. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, and gradually, resentment began to grow in me again. I absolutely detested Qin Wan, but I hated that corrupt official, the culprit behind all this, even more. If he hadn't been so corrupt and broke the law, desperately bleeding the people dry of their hard-earned money, Qin Wan's father wouldn't have gone to report him, wouldn't have been poisoned to death by him, and wouldn't have left Qin Wan all alone in the world. Then Qin Wan wouldn't have run here to seek shelter with Lu Zhi, nor would she be opposing me day in and day out like she is now. If not for this corrupt official, none of what followed would have happened. To be honest, I also also hate the emperor. I hate him for not distinguishing right from wrong, for being so easily deceived, and for mistakenly killing innocent, good people. But saying such treasonous things could cost me my head, so I can only curse him secretly in my heart. After my resentment went in a full circle, I was startled to realize that the one I resented most was still Lu Zhi. It was because his appetite was too grand, unwilling to mistreat his first wife, nor did he want to let down his master. He wanted it all. I used to think he didn't understand my pain, but in truth, Lu Zhi knew my pain all too well in his heart. He was dead certain I would never leave, paralyzed in bed with nothing to do. My mind kept wandering all over the place for ages. In the end, even Bitao could tell I was miserable, and she hesitantly tried to comfort me.
As your maid, I must still offer you a word of advice, madam. Please stop making a fuss from now on. The master has already been exceptionally good to you. Such a stable and comfortable life is something others can only wish for.
I understood what she meant. I married Lu Zhi when I was 16, and we supported each other through a whole decade. After Qin Wan married into the family, she caused constant trouble for 6 years. Counting carefully on my fingers, I have now entered my 32nd year. Pei Jin Zhen. To have your life turn out like this, you ought to be satisfied. I knew all too well the situation in the inner chambers of the wealthy estates in the capital. Either they favor their concubines and neglect their primary wives, where fresh young concubines ride roughshod over the main wife, making a mockery of her day in and day out. Or, in families that care slightly more about keeping up appearances, where propriety must be maintained on the surface, they enshrine the first wife like a living Buddha, leaving her with nothing but empty respect. Rarely is there a household where a main wife in her 30s, like me with Lu Zhi, can still bicker and be jealous of a fresh young concubine every day, while the master of the house remains willing to devote half of his time and effort to accompanying his first wife. If I could have truly understood how to quit while I was ahead, I wouldn't be suffering as much as I am now. But my mind was naturally stubborn. Some truths, no matter how hard I tried to learn them, just wouldn't click. Since Lu Zhi wanted to have his cake and eat it too, keeping both of us, why couldn't I be more ambitious too? I had absolutely no desire to be some clay Buddha, nor could I stomach the bitterness of sharing a man with someone else. If the love I possessed was flawed and incomplete, then I didn't want this piece of trash at all. In the year I turned 32, I made up my mind to pack my bags and leave, never to return. Life after moving out of the Lu family mansion was actually quite hard to endure. I was determined to make a clean break from Lu Zhi, so I didn't take a single item he had given me. Penniless, I had to do hard labor just to earn a bite to eat. It so happened that the kitchen in the mansion of philanthropist Yang was short on hands, specifically looking for someone to wash dishes and clean up. I went to try out and was hired on the spot. My wages were set at 1 string of coins per month, and room and board were included. Everyone in the kitchen was incredibly busy, spinning around like tops, with no time or interest to spare for me. Only one woman, who was also doing odd jobs, was willing to exchange a few words with me. I'm the kind of person who can't keep things bottled up, and since the work was tedious, I loved to chat with her to pass the time. We talked about this and that. We could chat about just about any topic. After talking a few times, we gradually became familiar with each other.
My surname is Sen, and I'm a bit older than you. You can just call me Sister Sen.
Sister Sen was an exceptionally warm-hearted person. When I first arrived, I couldn't make heads or tails of the kitchen when I couldn't find the tools I needed and went around asking everyone. It was always thanks to her guidance. She looked out for me in every possible way. The servants of the Yang household ate from a communal pot.
If you're late, nothing will be left for you.
Occasionally, when the kitchen staff got too busy, we didn't even have time to wolf down a meal. By the time we finally managed to get a free moment, the food on the table had long been snatched up, leaving us with no choice but to keep working on empty stomachs. Whenever she caught a spare moment, she would slip over to the stove and sneak a few white steamed buns inside her clothes. When it was my turn to miss out on the food, she would pull out 2 warm buns she had kept pressed against her chest. They were still piping hot. As we chatted idly at the dining table, she revealed that she had been kicked out of the house by her own husband, with absolutely nowhere else to go. She had ended up in this place. Her husband had previously been a somewhat well-off merchant. While running his business in Lianzhou, he took a local opera singer as his concubine. Not only was the singer more youthful than her and prettier than her, but she was also better at bearing children. In less than 2 years, she gave birth to a plump, healthy baby boy. This absolutely thrilled her husband. He decided to settle down permanently in Lianzhou, formally marrying the singer and welcoming her through the front door as his primary wife. So he simply discarded his first wife back in the capital, and even their own daughter became a burden to him. As a single mother raising her daughter alone, she begged everyone for help but was turned away everywhere, until only the Yang household was willing to give them a bite to eat. However, her meager wages dishes were docked time and again. When the conversation turned to children, she casually asked me,
Do you have any children of your own?
I shook my head and replied, I wish I did, but I'm just not that blessed. She let out a long sigh. He probably assumed that I was also cast out by my husband and sent back to my family because I couldn't bear children. To tell you the honest truth, which I've kept hidden away, I actually did conceive a child once before. It was just a terrible misfortune that I fell pregnant when I did. That year, the capital was struck by a severe famine, and our lives were desperately miserable and destitute. Lu Zhi would literally pinch pennies to scrape together half a steamed bun and hand it to me, but this mere half of a cold bun was nowhere near enough to stave off hunger. Being pregnant meant having another mouth to feed inside my belly. My hunger gnawed at me day and night, leaving me utterly restless, to the point where my vision blurred from starvation. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I thought about taking on more chores to do, hoping that by shifting my focus to other things, I might just numb this agonizing sensation of hunger. As it turned out, despite working myself to the bone, my stomach still rumbled just the same, and I was so starved that I felt lightheaded and weak with every step. On one occasion, a sudden violent cramp seized my calf. My vision went pitch black, and I pitched straight forward, collapsing into unconsciousness. When I finally opened my eyes again, I saw Lu Zhi with bloodshot eyes, holding me tightly in his arms, shaking and trembling uncontrollably. I could clearly feel his tears falling, but at that moment, I could no longer summon even a shred of energy to comfort him. I reached down to touch my lower abdomen. My belly, which had clearly been slightly swollen just the day before, was now completely flat and empty. I finally no longer had to feel the pangs of starvation, but the flesh of my own flesh inside me had been lost through all that suffering. Later on, our lives became more comfortable, but no matter how many bowls of bitter medicinal herbs I poured down my throat, it was all in vain. In the Yang family kitchen, there was always an abundance of chores to do every day. Being busy had its benefits. When I was constantly on the move, I had no time to miss Lu Zhi, and naturally, I wouldn't feel the heartache. So even though I was exhausted and gasping for breath, my heart was actually very peaceful. As time went on, I almost forgot about this man entirely, almost as if I had worked at the Yang family since I was a child. One day, the kitchen errand boy who bought the groceries fell ill. The supervisor saw that I was dutiful and felt I wasn't the type to take kickbacks on the side, so he confidently assigned the task to me. On my way back from the market, it just had to start raining, with both hands full of bags. I couldn't free up a hand to hold an umbrella, so I had no choice but to get soaked like a drenched chicken. Misfortunes never come singly. The bamboo basket for the vegetables was already old, making it easy to weaken when wet, and it was stuffed with such heavy things. As I was walking forward, the bottom of the basket suddenly broke open, and in an instant, fresh fish were flopping on the muddy ground. Live shrimp were leaping everywhere, and radishes and potatoes went rolling all over the place. Seeing them about to roll into a puddle of muddy water, I instantly panicked. I tried to grab this one, but accidentally stepped on that one. The ground was very slippery, and with a twist of my ankle, I fell hard to the ground with a thud. That fall was extremely hard, and I couldn't get up for a long time, with nothing but blankness left in my heart. After a moment, someone walked over holding an umbrella. The person holding the umbrella stared at me silently for a long time, then bent down and helped me up. I wanted to thank them, but when I looked up, I suddenly froze. It was Lu Zhi. I had imagined many scenes of reuniting with Lu Zhi, but never once had I been in such a pathetic state. I had worked so hard, wanting to make a better life for myself. I wanted to tell Lu Zhi that I didn't depend on him as much as he thought, and that I could survive without him. I tried my best to act as if nothing were wrong, just so I could have a bit of an upper hand when facing Lu Zhi, but I never expected to meet him again in this kind of situation. My previous pretense was instantly and completely wasted, turning into a huge joke. When I was soaked through by the heavy rain, I didn't shed a tear. When my things scattered all over the ground, I didn't cry. When I fell hard and felt the pain, I still didn't cry. But at this moment, my tears began to roll down uncontrollably. Lu Zhi stared at me for a long time and suddenly let out a sigh.
I thought that after leaving me, you would live a good life.
I lowered my head and wiped my face, smiling bitterly. As you can see, I am not living very comfortably.
Since that is the case, why did you leave in the first place?
Lu Zhi was very perplexed.
Was I not good enough to you? Did someone at home make you feel wronged? Or was there something not to your liking?
Faced with his barrage of questions, I lowered my head and remained silent. Seeing this, Lu Zhi stopped pressing me. Instead, softening his tone, he began to coax me in a low voice.
My dear wife, it is your husband's fault. Your husband did wrong. Be the bigger person and forgive me. Don't be angry with me anymore.
Lu Zhi lowered his posture, coaxing me with practiced ease. But this time, he was destined to be disappointed. This time is different. This time, I will never go back with you again. Lu Zhi was clearly stunned, wanting to say something more. I cut off his unfinished words and continued speaking. Just as you see, after leaving you, I haven't been doing well. When I was working as a helper in the Yang family's kitchen, I really couldn't get used to it at first. Having grown accustomed to a pampered life, coarse food was hard to swallow. Sometimes I worked so hard during the day that I was gasping for breath, and when I lay in bed at night, I felt as if my entire body had been torn apart. Everything ached. The servants' quarters in the Yang residence were also small. I had to squeeze onto a shared platform bed with 7 or 8 others. I couldn't even stretch my legs out when sleeping at night. There were actually many other hardships, but I won't go into detail with you. Most of the time, I just grit my teeth and endured it. But no matter how bad my life was, I never once thought of returning to your side. No matter how difficult life is at the Yang residence, there will eventually be an end to it. My hands and feet work fine, and I can save up money. Once I save enough capital in the future, I'll take that money to start a small business on the streets, or buy a couple of acres of modest farmland in the countryside. No matter what I do, there will always be something to look forward to. But if I stay by your side, I may have no worries about food and clothing on the surface, but my heart would suffer in torment every day. When I was at the manor, I struggled through each day, calculating which night you might finally remember me. But I was foolish, and I guessed wrong every single time. My heart, full of joy, always ended up empty. That kind of feeling was hard to bear, but I was even more afraid that one day I would become completely used to this torment. You can call me stubborn and difficult, or say that I'd rather starve to death outside than bow my head to accept half-baked charity. When Lu Zhi heard this, he froze completely in place. Only after a long while did he speak haltingly.
So this is what you have been planning all along. I never knew that your life at home was so painful.
I smiled gently. Now that you know everything, please leave. Lu Zhi remained silent, like a statue for a long time. Then, without saying another word, he turned around and left. A few days later, someone came to the door, specifically asking to see me. It was Lu Zhi. He hung his head, looking as if he were admitting his mistake.
I gave the money and the house deed to Qin Wan and sent her away. Wife, when do you plan on coming home? I miss you so much.
I shook my head gently. Lu Zhi, trust is a very fragile thing. As things stand now, it is true that I haven't completely let go of you, but I really don't dare to trust you again. Lu Zhi looked utterly helpless.
I've done everything you asked. I sent Qin Wan away, and I promised you there would never be anyone else between us. We've been husband and wife for so long. You should know me well enough to know that I never go back on what I promise. I've complied with all your demands. I really don't understand what more you want. Wife, I'm actually quite foolish. I can never guess what is on your mind. Just take pity on me and tell me the truth. What exactly do I have to do to win you back?
I fell silent for a long moment. Lu Zhi, how wonderful it would have been if you had said this earlier, back when my heart hadn't completely turned cold toward you. But now, no matter what you say or do, it is useless. You know in your heart that I am very stubborn. Once I've made up my mind about something, no matter what, I will never change it. It was so in the past, and it is even more so now. In the past, no matter how hard life got, I couldn't bear to leave. Now, no matter how difficult life gets, I will never look back. Hearing this, Lu Zhi's face instantly dimmed. He stood dazed for a long time, a bitter smile squeezing from his lips.
Is there really no hope left for the two of us in this lifetime?
Slowly, and with absolute resolve, I shook my head. Lu Zhi let out a long sigh.
I understand.
Just before leaving, he pulled out a stack of banknotes and stuffed them into my hand.
It is not easy making a living out there. Keep this bit of savings to protect yourself, if possible. Quit your job in the Yang family's kitchen and go do something you actually like. Don't be so quick to refuse me either. I have my own reasons for doing this. Just watching you suffer like this, it makes me feel terrible inside. The money I'm giving you.
Just think of it as a way to ease my own conscience, just as I was about to decline. But Lu Zhi let out a chuckle.
If you truly mean what you said, and will only treat me as a stranger from now on, then you have even more reason to accept this money. What outsider in their right mind would refuse free money brought right to their doorstep?
I indeed happened to be short on money at the moment, so I could only accept his banknotes. I'll write you an IU, and I'll pay you back later. Lu Zhi took the promissory note and tore it to pieces without even looking at it.
I told you, this money is not a loan.
With this capital from Lu Zhi, I quit my job doing chores in the Yang family's kitchen and took over an embroidery shop that was on the verge of closing. I also picked up Sister Chen on the way. My eyesight isn't very good these days, and I can't compete with those young embroiderers, but I wasn't completely without confidence. After spending so many years in the wealthy Lu mansion, I knew exactly what kind of patterns those rich folks in Jinqing preferred. As time went on, the embroidery shop gradually got on the right track. During that time, Lu Zhi would drop by from time to time time. Sometimes he would bring some things over.
Our family cook bought some premium carp. I figured you'd love them, so I brought over 2 of them.
I couldn't quite figure out his true intentions and only wanted to shut him out of my door. Lu Zhi stared at me with an anxious, pleading look in his eyes.
Even if we can't be husband and wife, I thought we could at least still be friends.
Sometimes, he would just lean against the doorframe, quietly watching me embroider on the taut silk fabric. At those moments, neither of us said a word. As the afternoon sun shone into the room, there was actually a brief, beautiful illusion of peace. After some time passed, I went to find Lu Zhi on my own initiative for the first time. Lu Zhi showed an expression of extreme, unexpected, pleasant surprise. I'm here to repay my debt. The principal and interest are all here. Banknotes totaling 1,300 taels. Please count it to see if it is correct. I placed the banknotes on the table. Lu Zhi slowly froze in place.
Did you come all this way just to tell me this?
I paused for a moment and then said, from this day on, we are completely even. Leaving those words behind, I ignored Lu Zhi, turned around, and left. A few days later, Lu Zhi came to see me in person. He said the emperor was sending him to Yangzhou to serve as a high-ranking official, and he didn't know when he would be transferred back. He had come today to say goodbye to me. When he said this, he had clearly been drinking on the sly. With the help of the alcohol, he asked me, trembling slightly.
I heard that the craftsmanship of Yangzhou's embroiderers is the best in the world. Would you be willing to come to Yangzhou with me, to broaden your horizons?
I shook my head gently. I still have attachments here. I cannot leave. The light in Lu Zhi's eyes instantly vanished.
You mean the embroidery shop you built with your own hands? If only one day I could become your attachment as well.
I pondered for a moment and said, many years ago, you were my only attachment.
But that has long ceased to be the case. Just because I made one wrong move by mistake. No matter how I tried to make amends later, it was of no use.
He probably realized that once he left this time, seeing each other again in the future would become nothing but a pipe dream. He ignored my silence, and Lu Zhi continued to mutter to himself, usually a man of few words. He now seemed determined to utter every word of his lifetime.
I was afraid you'd let your mind wander, thinking that because I got promoted and wealthy, I wanted to cast aside my first wife. I only ever wished for your peace and safety, wishing you could live a leisurely life, sheltered under my wing. Just for that, I spent the first 2 years being shut out by my peers everywhere, and ended up in a miserable state. Yet I never uttered a single word of complaint. Later, when we couldn't conceive, others urged me to take a concubine. I was pointed at and cursed as an unfilial son, being told I had failed my late parents, and that the Lu family line would end with me. But I still refused to take a concubine. I knew there was always a sore spot deep in your heart, and I dreaded seeing you weep and grow old, dwelling on the past. My heart isn't made of stone. When the baby was lost, the pain deep in my heart that day was no less than yours. As for all the other old trivial matters, I can say in good conscience that I never wronged you. From beginning to end, I made only one major mistake, and that was letting Qin Wan into our home back then. It was indeed my lack of consideration. A foolish move. Even the monks say that laying down the cleaver makes one a Buddha. Are you really unwilling to give me even the slightest chance to make amends?
Lu Zhi's tone was close to collapsing. I stared intently at him. Lu Zhi, I am no clay bodhisattva. I have never possessed such grand tolerance. There are some wrong paths that must never be taken. Once you take that single wrong step, don't ever think of turning back. On the day Lu Zhi set off for Yangzhou to take up his post, I went out to see him off for this final journey. On my way back, I passed by that roadside shop. A plainly dressed young woman stopped outside the door, inquiring with a face full of caution.
Boss, how much is an order of longevity noodles here? Today is my husband's birthday, and I'm not very good at cooking, so I wanted to buy a bowl for him.
The shop assistant sized her up from head to toe.
40 copper coins a bowl.
The woman's face instantly turned pale. Her smile froze on her lips, hanging there stiff.
I don't have that much money on me right now. Could I buy it on credit first? I'll make up the difference as soon as I save enough money.
Or else, she suddenly remembered something and took off the bracelet on her wrist, which seemed to be the only piece of jewelry she had on her.
This is the dowry my mother passed down to me. It is quite valuable. Can I leave it with your shop as collateral for now?
We are not a pawn shop here. Just leave.
Seeing them at an impasse, I couldn't bear to just watch. I stepped forward and said, the money for this bowl of noodles. I'll pay it for her. The young woman looked utterly surprised, expressing her gratitude to me repeatedly. Before leaving, she couldn't help but ask out of curiosity.
Ma'am, we have never met before. Why were you willing to help me?
I thought about it for a moment, smiled, and said, perhaps because I also really love the longevity noodles from this shop. Many years ago, because we were poor, I shared a bowl with someone else. Since then, many years have passed, and I have experienced many things. That person and I gradually went our separate ways. I had no regrets when we parted, just as I had no regrets when we were together. Thinking back on it now, that bowl of noodles back then is still the most delicious meal I've ever had in my life.